The third Sunday of Advent is traditionally known as Gaudete Sunday, Latin meaning rejoice, ancient tradition of the church. So it really marks a point in the church's Advent season where it really transitions into the birth of Christ, and our focus becomes that. So this is why I'm up here wearing this ridiculous color tonight. Church calls this rose. We all know this is pink. We wear this twice a year, and I'm willing to it takes a real man to pull this color off, by the way, right? But it's really there, it's a reminder for us as we get closer to Christmas, a little about a week and a half away, that we rejoice. And we rejoice because God is doing something concrete. All right, so these readings today, one thing's kind of in common. They have kind of a desert theme. All right, that first reading, you hear Isaiah talk about the desert and the parched land will exult. So anytime you hear like the term desert in Scripture, just know it's an area of evil. It's an area of desolation. The ancients kind of viewed it as a place where bad things happened. You didn't have any water out there. You were subject to the elements. Things that went on in the desert was the devil's domain. It's kind of an image of man's fallen state. So the desert, the parched land will exult, the steppe will rejoice and bloom. So I say God is doing something concrete. He's going to take the devil's domain, he's going to take evil's domain, and he's going to make it bloom again. And when Jesus constantly goes out into the desert, he goes out there to encounter evil. He goes out there, that's where he encounters Satan. He goes out there to get away from the things of the world, and he goes to really confront evil head on. And he is the fulfillment of that. John the Baptist, they give this image today in the gospel reading, John the Baptist. Where does John the Baptist live at? He's out in the desert. He's far away from the comforts of Jerusalem and the world. He's out there living in the desert. We've heard this. He's out there, wearing camel's hair, and he's out there eating honey, and he's out there eating locusts. But people are streaming out there to him. They want to encounter something. And they're going out there to encounter the truth. They're going out there in hope that this man living out there is doing something miraculous in the desert, something that usually doesn't happen out there. Even the Pharisees and the scribes, they've heard about John the Baptist. They're going out, they're encountering this man in the desert. And I'm saying all this because we say this is Gaudete Sunday. Rejoice. Because God is making his creation new. From the moment of our sinfulness, from the moment we are cast out of communion with God in the Garden of Eden, we've been living in a desert. We've been living in a desert of sin. We are slaves to that. But Christ goes to encounter that. And that gives us moments for rejoicing. And rejoicing is not just a feeling. I'm going to say this. We have to be intentional here the next week and a half or so, just in everyday life about our faith, what it means to rejoice. Because it's not just good feelings, but it's an intentionality. I think about the heartache people go through this time of year. As a priest, I hear it all the time. This is the time of year where suicides are the most increased, the time where people's depression really rises. They really don't feel like rejoicing. One of the things that stick out in my memory 3 years ago, I was home for Thanksgiving. I was a new priest. I'd been a priest for 3 months. Really hadn't encountered much heartache yet. Everything's just hunky-dory and it's going good. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing. But I was home and I got a phone call from Archbishop Rodi. when I was home on Thanksgiving Day. And he knew I was home in Prattville, and he said, I'm here with my best friend. It's a priest out of Louisiana, and some kids, they were coming out of his parish to go to Georgia, were involved in an automobile accident on I-85 just east of Tallahassee. And he says, I think it's pretty bad. I don't know, but can you go over there and check on how they're doing? So when I walked in to the emergency room in Montgomery, it was the worst of the worst case scenarios you could imagine. All right. Good man, driver, had fallen asleep early in the morning. He'd been driving early, coming out of Louisiana. He got on that dull stretch of road east of east of Montgomery, and he fell asleep at the wheel with 3 kids in the car, and he hit the guardrail. And the kid in the front seat, had sustained major injuries. And I got to the hospital and found out, he had passed away from his injuries. The kid in the back seat really had, sustained major injuries, and he had a couple of broken legs. And, all of this, I didn't even understand what was happening. I was just going in, trying to calm the other kids down, about 15 other Boy Scouts, and had to stay there at the hospital all day while the parents were coming in from Louisiana, not knowing what was happening to their kids, and being there with the parents, of this kid who has deceased, and to take them down and to go visit their deceased son. It happened right around the holidays. So rejoicing, that family will never again rejoice in the sense that me and you can probably rejoice during the holidays. It will always be a painful time for them. Yesterday I had the privilege of going to visit this girl in Birmingham from my old parish, from the school, the Catholic school. And she was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer a few months ago. And she's having to spend the holidays getting chemo treatment and radiation treatment at the same time. She's losing her hair. She's suffering greatly. Her parents are suffering greatly. Her family is suffering greatly. So when the church says rejoice, they don't mean an emotional rejoicing. Can't do that right now. They can't do it. But I'll tell you one thing she did teach me yesterday. She had the biggest smile on her face as I sit there and played Uno with her for about 2 hours. She had the biggest smile on her face because she knows the desert will be made whole again. The desert will bloom again, as Isaiah says. I'm not sure what her future is going to be. I'm not sure where she goes from here, but she has an understanding the desert will bloom again. Why? Because Christ has always gone into the desert and conquered it. And that's just not for these kids out of Louisiana. That's not just for this little girl I saw yesterday. That's for all of us. We all have a desert. All of us are going through something. Each one of us. And I don't know what that is with each one of you, but we've all been through something. We've all had to go into the desert here or there in our lives. But what do we encounter in the desert? Do we encounter John the Baptist who says, you know what? The forerunner is coming. James, in that second reading today, be patient. The forerunner has been here. This desert will bloom again. Accept that. Understand. It's not a desolate place anymore. And I think that's why Christmas is so important to us. That's why preparation for Christmas is so important. We know that God becomes incarnate. And that's the great story of salvation. What was lost in the Garden of Eden, through our sinfulness, through our disconnect with God, He's sewing all of this back together. The desert will become the new garden, the heavenly kingdom, the new Jerusalem. The desert is no longer laid waste. The story unfolds, and it unfolds through the birth of God incarnate in Jerusalem. And He sewed it all back together for us. And no matter whatever the heartaches we encounter in our lives, we know that Christ has walked there before us and sanctified it. When we enter into the desert, Christ has gone there before us. He has sanctified it. And we all need that message this time of year. And that's why we can truly say with the Lord, rejoice, for God is with us.